What up, YouTube? Here with a post-fight video of the Teofimo Lopez versus Jamaine Ortiz fight. Now, before I give y'all the summary of what happened in the fight, I'm going to tell y'all the results first. Teofimo Lopez was able to retain his lineal Ring Magazine and WBO super lightweight titles via unanimous decision. Now, this was a controversial fight because many with good insight and good knowledge when it comes to the sport of boxing had thought that Jamaine Ortiz should have walked away with the victory and became the new lineal Ring Magazine and WBO super lightweight champion. And I as well was on that side because Jamaine Ortiz, I thought, had earned the victory in that fight. I thought he fought a brilliant, well strategized fight, and he outboxed Teofimo Lopez. I personally had the fight score 115 to 113 for Jamaine Ortiz. And he did a good job. To sum up what happened in the fight, Jamaine Ortiz did a good job at frustrating Teofimo Lopez, making sure that the fight wasn't fought at the pace that Teofimo Lopez wanted to fight at. And you could see throughout majority of the fight, Teofimo Lopez was being frustrated because he couldn't get any of his onslaughts going, and the fight was being fought in a style where Teofimo Lopez wanted to have this fight being fought at. And Lopez couldn't get Ortiz to engage when Lopez wanted him to. And Jamaine Ortiz did a good job at keeping the distance. He showed good ring generalship. He showed good technical fundamental skills. And he landed the more cleaner shots in this fight than Teofimo Lopez did. And this fight, according to my scorecards, my personal scorecards, it was a close competitive bout. The last two rounds, I gave it to Teofimo Lopez because Teofimo Lopez started to show low signs of desperation and started to turn up the offense, and he got more aggressive, and he should have did that from the get-go, at least from the earlier mid-round and on. That's when Lopez should have brought the heat to Ortiz. And Lopez, it looked like he was more hesitant because he couldn't cut off the ring versus Ortiz. And the foot speed of Ortiz looked like it was too much for Lopez to follow. And Lopez couldn't trap Ortiz to have Ortiz be stationary and for Lopez to come at him with flurries of shots. And Ortiz did a good job at making Lopez miss a lot of his shots. And Teofimo Lopez, it looked like he wanted to have his stamina well spread out throughout all 12 rounds of the fight. And if we're speaking from a stamina saving perspective, then Lopez did a good job, but that's not what wins fights. What wins fights is doing the more efficient work, and Ortiz did the more efficient work than Teofimo Lopez did. And when Teofimo Lopez turned up the heat and started to bring that more aggressive come forward style, then that's when he started to gain some success at cutting off the ring and having Ortiz engage with him, because he would have Ortiz on the back pedal. And Ortiz, he was fighting off his back foot throughout majority of the fight. He did a good job because he was able to stop Teofimo Lopez at his tracks, and he did a good job at not letting Teofimo Lopez throw a lot of his shots, and Ortiz's shots was stopping Teofimo Lopez at his tracks, other than it being the other way around. And Lopez, for him to get a unanimous decision victory and not one of the judges having it in favor of Ortiz, it was a surprise to me because it should have been officiated better, and it almost seemed like a fix as to how the judges had this fight scored. And it reminds me of the fight that Ortiz had versus Vasily Lomachenko. That fight could have been scored either ways. And I thought that fight was better officiated than this fight versus Lopez, because I thought that fight was very similar. I'll say it was very similar how it was fought. And many people thought that Ortiz should have walked away the winner in that fight versus Lomachenko as well. And for Ortiz to be not ranked amongst the top 10 when it comes to the title organizations, no title organizations have Jamaine Ortiz on their top 10 rankings. And that's a shame, because I know when he fought Vasily Lomachenko, that fight was at lightweight, and he recently moved up to super lightweight to have this fight versus Teofimo Lopez. And I know they have a history because they fought in the amateurs. Now, I don't keep up with the amateur scenes, and from what I've heard, Jamaine Ortiz defeated Teofimo Lopez during their amateur career, and that's why there was a lot of talk about Jamaine Ortiz possibly being able to defeat Teofimo Lopez for the lineal and WBO super lightweight titles. And this is not to discredit Teofimo Lopez, because it was a close competitive bout. Teofimo Lopez showed gained effort, and he wanted the more fan-friendly style fight, and that was his whole purpose going into the fight, because he wanted to make this fight a entertaining fight for the fans to witness. But Jamaine Ortiz didn't allow that. Jamaine Ortiz did what was the most sensible thing to do, and what is supposed to be done, and that is fight the fight that gets the win. And he did just that. But it's the fact that the judges didn't see what most people saw from this fight, and that's a shame. And I don't want to get into all that theoretical thoughts, and I'm sure this has been said throughout from the start of the sport of boxing. They say the politics came into play because Teofimo Lopez is a more marketable fighter that is better known than Jamaine Ortiz. Promotionally and marketably speaking, it saves more money to give the win to who was already the champion, and that being Teofimo Lopez, than crowning the new champion that was more deserving in Jamaine Ortiz, who fought the better fight and who should have walked away the winner, because throughout most people who spectated that fight had thought that Jamaine Ortiz had won that fight. And as I said, Teofimo Lopez was more game. He was more eager, and that is somewhat surprising, because you would expect a challenger who is lesser known to be more eager, to want to make an emphatic statement, and to be more hungry to engage in this fight. But Jamaine Ortiz prepared perfectly for this fight. Jamaine Ortiz fought a fight like a veteran. He fought the fight with a proper state of mind. He, as I said, executed a brilliant boxing game plan, and he stuck to the plan. And Jamaine Ortiz didn't show any signs of rookiness, didn't show signs of any greenness. He fought the fight that he was supposed to fight throughout all 12 rounds of the fight. And it goes to show how well smart Jamaine Ortiz is, and he fought the fight like a veteran in this fight. He made Teofimo Lopez chase, and Teofimo Lopez couldn't find his target, just the way how Jamaine Ortiz had wanted this fight to fight. And the fact that it didn't have the results that Jamaine Ortiz wanted to have is disappointing. And Teofimo Lopez, with him, it's always a bumpy roller coaster ride. It's always a hit and a miss with Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez, and the criticism that he's faced thus far has been the fact that he's been non-consistent when it comes to his performance. He fought one of his best fights at winning the lineal Ring Magazine and the WBO Super Lightweight title in a dominant one-sided performance versus Josh Taylor prior to fighting Jamaine Ortiz. It was one of his best performances in his professional boxing career. He fought a brilliant fight versus Vasily Lomachenko to become the unified lightweight champion. And then he had health problems, not making excuses for his defeat that he suffered versus George Gambosis when he lost the unified lightweight titles. He had weight problems with making weight at 135, and then he had problems with his lungs prior to fighting George Gambosis, and then that's what initiated his move up to 140. And then in his debut fight at super lightweight, he fought a good fight in his debut fight versus a lesser known opponent in Pedro Campa, where he TKO'd him in the 7th round. And then he fought a tougher challenge in Sandor Martin, and they fought to a split decision where Teofimo Lopez walked out the winner. I personally had that fight scored in favor of Teofimo Lopez by a round. It could have been a draw, but it was a very close competitive bout. And many people had thought that Sandor Martin should have walked away the winner. That fight was disputable. Either fighter could have walked away the winner, and I wouldn't mind seeing another fight with Teofimo Lopez and Sandor Martin because of how competitive and close that fight was. And Sandor Martin is a high-ranked contender according to the WBO, which is a title held currently by Teofimo Lopez. And then he fights Josh Taylor, as I had mentioned before, one of his best performances thus far in Teofimo Lopez's pro career. And then he fights Jamaine Ortiz in a controversial decision victory where he was able to retain his lineal Ring Magazine and WBO Super Lightweight titles. And that fight, much like the fight with Sandor Martin, has questions in the air where does Teofimo Lopez have the it factor to be considered the number one fighter at super lightweight? And the super lightweight right now doesn't have a unified champion when it comes to their title organizations other than Teofimo Lopez, who holds the lineal belt as well as the WBO. But when it comes to the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF super lightweight titles, there's respective champions for each respective title organizations. The WBC, that title is held by Devin Haney when he defeated Regis Progress in what was Devin Haney's arguably and considerably one of Devin Haney's best, most brilliant, dominant performances versus Regis Progress, who has been considered a top-notch super lightweight, a stable name amongst the top of the super lightweights for a while now. And for Devin Haney to do that versus Regis Progress in his first debut fight at super lightweight is impressive. And then he's going to be fighting Ryan Garcia, who moved up to super lightweight a while ago. And in his last fight, he recently moved up back to super lightweight after having that mega fight versus Gervonta Davis where he suffered his first defeat. And that's a big money fight coming up next month for the WBC super lightweight title, where Devin Haney is going to be defending that crown versus Ryan Garcia. And Devin Haney is showing his consistency at fighting the best available opponents out there for him. And Devin Haney is already a well-recognized top 10, if not top 5 best pound for pound fighters in the world, not only in the super lightweight division, but in all of boxing. And he is already well known, as I said, and he's going to be fighting another well known name in Ryan Garcia next month. And then the IBF, Sabrina Matias, who is considered to be the scariest champion at super lightweight, with devastating power, with a awkward, hard to telegraph style. And he's got a fight coming up in the summer of this year in his native of Puerto Rico. And then the WBA super lightweight champion Rolando Romero, who is well known because of his outlandish outside of the ring style. He's going to be fighting Isaac Cruz this month on the co-main event of the Tim Tszyu versus Keith Thurman fight for the WBA super lightweight title. And then Ismael Barroso is the interim WBA super lightweight champion, and Rolly Romero defeated Barroso in a controversial stoppage win. I have mentioned this fight and how that fight went before and how it was controversial, but Rolly Romero was on his way to cruising a easy victory versus Barroso, because Barroso was showing signs of wariness and him showing signs of slowing down, and the momentum of that fight was favoring Rolly Romero. That's why he was pushing Barroso back, and he was landing his onslaught on Barroso because Barroso was slowing down. And that's why that fight was looking the way it was looking, despite the fact that the referee has stepped in before Barroso was really hurt. And Barroso, in his last fight, was able to score an impressive first round knockout win, and now has catapulted himself as the interim WBA super lightweight champion, and that makes him next in line to challenge the legitimate WBA super lightweight champion, whoever walks away the winner of that fight between Rolando Romero and Isaac Cruz. Now, I'm not going to be previewing that fight, so I will give y'all my predictions on who I think is going to win that fight with Romero and Cruz. I'm picking Isaac Cruz to win that fight, and I'm picking Cruz to win that fight via stoppage, and that will make Cruz, if he walks away the winner of that fight with Rolando Romero, then Barroso would be next to challenge the winner of that fight. And there's a healthy scene going on right now in the super lightweight division. The lightweight division used to be the most compelling division in all of boxing. Now it's looking like the super lightweight division is where it's at when it comes to top sheer competition in boxing and having the most well-recognized names competing at that weight class. And who can be the ideal opponent next for Teofimo Lopez, a lineal and the WBO super lightweight champion? Now, because of how the fight went with Jamaine Ortiz, despite the fact that this fight was a competitive, close, controversial bout, but the fans are not campaigning for this rematch with Lopez and Ortiz because it didn't have such a fan-friendly style. This fight wasn't a exciting affair for the fans to witness because it looked more like a chess match than a fight. Now, that goes to show, well, I could at least say for the casual fans, that it's less appreciated when it comes to this style of boxing. But when it comes to avid boxing fans, they appreciate this style because it is such a classy style and it is a efficient, effective style that Jamaine Ortiz fought at. But if we're speaking from a just stance point of view, then Jamaine Ortiz is very well deserving of a rematch and having another shot at the lineal and WBO super lightweight title. If not, then Sandor Martin will be a ideal opponent for Teofimo Lopez, and this time it'll be for a bigger fight field, for a bigger magnitude of a fight, because it would have a title on the line. And if Jack Catterall can defeat Josh Taylor in a rematch, and they got a fight coming up soon, and if Catterall can defeat Taylor, which Catterall should have walked away the winner from their first fight, then Catterall would be deserving of a shot at the lineal and WBO super lightweight title versus Teofimo Lopez. And Jack Catterall isn't listed amongst the top 10 contenders when it comes to the WBO, but when it comes to Ring Magazine and their rankings, when it comes to the super lightweight division, Jack Catterall is ranked amongst the top 10 contenders according to the Ring Magazine. And then there is Arnold Barboza, who's going to be fighting on the undercard of the Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia card. And he's the number one ranked contender when it comes to the WBO. And Barboza, it would have been easier for him to have a fight versus Teofimo Lopez if he would have stayed with Top Rank, which was the promotional company that he was fighting with prior to signing with Golden Boy. And if he gets a win in his next fight, that would make him a more stronger candidate to challenge for the WBO super lightweight title. And ever since Teofimo Lopez moved up to super lightweight, Arnold Barboza has been a possible opponent mentioned for Teofimo Lopez to get in there with next. And the only thing that makes it somewhat difficult for that fight to happen is the promotional difference, despite the fact that Top Rank and Golden Boy has worked together before to make fights happen. That's why that fight isn't out of a chance yet. And then the next best ranked contender, according to the WBO, is Jose Ramirez. He's been a household stable name amongst the top of the super lightweights for a while, a former champion as well recognized amongst boxing fans. And after his fight versus Josh Taylor, he hasn't been consistent. He's had a huge inconsistent gap from being active. He only fought once a year from this last 2 years. He only fought once during the year 2022. He earned a victory versus Jose Pedraza, and he got a decision victory over on Jose Pedraza. And then after a year layoff, he fought Richard Comey and was able to stop Richard Comey. And both Pedraza and Comey are well-experienced opponents who's fought at the top of the super lightweights for a while. And for Jose Ramirez to get a victory over on those guys is impressive. And for him to continue that streak, for him to be able to maintain his position as a number 2 ranked contender according to the WBO, and for him to have a strong shot at challenging for the WBO and Lineal Ring Magazine super lightweight title versus Teofimo Lopez, he's going to have to fight a fighter of the same status, if not better, from his last 2 opponents in Jose Pedraza and Richard Comey. And Jose Ramirez, he hasn't fought in more than almost a year, and he isn't scheduled to fight anytime soon. And it's a bad look for Jose Ramirez to have not fought in more than a year with the ranking that he holds right now. And when it comes to top level fighters and them not being consistent and having a layoff and a inconsistent schedule like Jose Ramirez isn't not only good for the status of the fighter, but for the fighter himself, because when you're of that stature, you're going to want to stay as busy as possible. That way he could keep his name amongst the top of the division, and as well as wanting to gain back his championship status that he once held. And the fight with Teofimo Lopez and Jose Ramirez would be an easy fight to make happen because both fighters are working with Top Rank. And it would be a good marketable fight to make happen because of how well known both fighters are. Both fighters have earned themselves a reputation, and both fighters have a status where they are well known amongst boxing fans. And Teofimo Lopez versus Jose Ramirez, because of their status, would be a marketable match and as well as a good match as well for the sport's sake, because of both fighters and their elite status and their experience. And as I have said, that would be the most easy fight to make happen, promotionally speaking. And it's sensible because after Arnold Barboza, Jose Ramirez is the next best ranked contender with the title organization that has Teofimo Lopez as their champion. And then as far as Jamaine Ortiz goes, Jamaine Ortiz, unfortunately, speaking on his behalf, he doesn't have a fan-friendly style. And from a just stance point of view, he is deserving of a rematch versus Teofimo Lopez because of how competitive and how close this fight was, where many people had thought, as I mentioned before, Ortiz should have been crowned a new champion that night. But because of how this fight went, and because it wasn't such a entertaining fight, stylistically speaking, there isn't much campaign for a rematch to happen with Ortiz and Lopez. Now, I wouldn't mind seeing another fight with these two, but this doesn't mean that Ortiz and his future isn't looking bright, because Jamaine Ortiz still has a bright future ahead of him. As I have said before, because the fans that are casuals and that don't tap into the sport of boxing didn't find this affair to be exciting, doesn't mean that a rematch isn't gonna happen. If a rematch were to happen with Ortiz and Lopez, I would not mind it, because it would be just for that fight to happen again. Because Jamaine Ortiz is well deserving for another shot at the super lightweight titles. Now, Jamaine Ortiz is a threat to any top fighters, including the champions at super lightweight. It would be a tough challenge for Sabrina Matias, and as well as it would be for Jamaine Ortiz. And with the in-ring IQ and the brilliance and the style that Jamaine Ortiz has, that would be a stylistical challenge for both Ortiz and Matias. And then Devin Haney, if he was to fight Jamaine Ortiz, that would be a chess match of a fight as well. And then I would favor Jamaine Ortiz to walk away the winner if he was to fight either Rolly Romero or Isaac Cruz for the WBA super lightweight titles. And I don't know if these title organizations' websites have updated their rankings, but Jamaine Ortiz is surely deserving of being amongst the top 10 ranked contenders when it comes to the super lightweight division. And with that being said, that does it for this post-fight video. Subscribe to this channel if y'all want. And like this content. Share this video if y'all want. Click the links in the description to show y'all support for this channel. Anything would be appreciated. And I'm out of here, y'all. Be good and peace.